Okay, Seneca letter 123 again, continuing. Final letter and my final thoughts on the book as a whole. Final letter in this edition. This actually does not include all the letters. I don't know. I didn't know that whenever I bought this. Or else I probably would have gotten a different one, but whatever, it's fine. Um, anyway, so continuing along with the what I said in the last video about let me get back to it. When my cat was licking me, apparently someone on YouTube was not very fond of that. Um, One of the causes of the troubles that beset us is the way our lives are guided by the example of others. So, that's keeping up with the Joneses, peer pressure, just different kinds of things like that. He goes on at length. I recommend reading this one. I recommend reading almost all of them. There's only a handful that I didn't think were very good. And even the ones that I didn't necessarily talk about here, some of them some of them just didn't interest me, and some of them were like just kind of repeating things that he had already said before, so that's why I didn't really talk much about them. But he talks about basically people that are very vain, um, people that care about things that just don't matter. Talks about trendy things. He says, with all such people, you should avoid associating. These are the people who pass on vices, transmitting them from one character to another. Uh, he used to think of One used to think that the type of person who spreads tales was as bad as any, but there are persons who spread vices, and association with them does a lot of damage. He goes into quite a bit of detail talking about, I would describe as almost hyper hedonistic. He might be talking about the Epicureans, I'm not sure. Um, but it also does talk about, you know what, I just now thought of this. This might be a little bit off the wall, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Andrew Tate. Um, and I don't know that much about him, honestly, and this is the most political I'll get. I barely know who he is. I just know that he's crazy, and I mean like crazy, crazy. Um, I don't even know if it's accurate to even describe him as political. He's just nuts. But he's more than just insane. He's also he's concerned about his appearance in a way that is ironically kind of effeminate. And by appearance, I don't mean his physical appearance. Maybe his physical appearance too. I don't know, but the way that people perceive him. Um, I know he's obsessed with masculinity in kind of a weird way. That's what I originally even know about him. But so he goes along that in some detail. I did not intend to spend this much time talking about this because I really want to get to the overall point, and the reason why is because the letter actually ends with something that I think is a pretty good. The last paragraph is something that I think is a very good way of a very good summary of his thinking. Um, the kind of talk to which we should be. I'm just going to read the whole paragraph. I'm going to stop and give commentary. The kind of talk to which we should be better to turn our ears is this: no man's good by accident. Virtue has to be learned. That's something that I think might actually be controversial. Some people today think that man is naturally good. I certainly don't believe that. Pleasure is a poor and petty thing. No value should be set on it. It's something we share with dumb animals. Minutest, most insignificant creatures scutter after it. So I would not go so far to say, and I don't think he would too. I don't think he's like never have any kind of pleasure. That's not what he's saying. He's even talking about going to the bathhouses Doesn't sound very pleasurable to me, but whatever. Maybe I say that because I'm a 21st century American. Showers are for getting clean. Uh, and whenever I rent a cabin in the woods, it always comes with a hot tub, and I just realized I don't like hot tubs. Like, I don't hate them; they're fine. They're just don't interest me. You like them, that's fine. That has nothing to do with this at all. Glory is an empty, changeable thing, as fickle as the weather. Oh my gosh, how true is that? I've already mentioned before the idea of Ozymandias, the poem that was used in the Watchmen. I You see a statue or remains of a statue of Ramses II in the middle of the desert, and there's a plaque that says, "I am Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look at my work, ye mighty, and despair." And there's nothing around it anymore. His empire is gone. His glory is fleeting. It's a empty, changeable thing, as fickle as the weather. I kind of look at people that try to whenever you want to, you're obsessed with the way people view you, the way that that you're seen by history. When people talk about being on the right or wrong side of history, that's an example of this. That's also comes from a Hegelian idea. That's kind of dumb, but that's you shouldn't be concerned about that. That's really not important. You should be concerned about being virtuous no matter what, no matter how it's seen by others. Now, from a Christian perspective, of course, I would say you should be concerned about virtue. You should be concerned about pleasing God, not pleasing man. Now, you should be, well, we must obey God rather than man. Not much, that would have said not much later, maybe about the same time as this, when I think it was Peter said that in the book of Acts, we must obey God rather than man. And maybe around the same time that Seneca was executed by Nero. You know, he may not have been able to avoid it. Who really knows? I don't remember much about the history of that, about what it was that made Nero turn against Seneca. I think it was inevitable since Nero was nuts. But poverty is no evil to anyone unless he kicks against it. You know, why do you kick against the codes? Death is not an evil. What is it then? The one law mankind has that is free of all discrimination. Everybody dies. I'm pretty sure I said this before too. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, you're black, white, you're Christian, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, atheist, Buddhist, Pastafarian, Rastafarian, Jedi, whatever. Everybody dies. It's the great equalizer. It's the one law mankind has that is free of all discrimination. Superstition is an idiotic heresy. It fears those it should love. It dishonors those it worships. It fears, superstition. I'm not 100% sure what he means by superstition, to tell you the truth. I don't think it means exactly the way we mean it today. From the context, it seems like something that is afraid of, maybe that is trying to call upon the gods or the luck to try to avoid things that it can't avoid, like poverty, like death. And it should love those things, like the concept of amor fati. You should love your fate. That's the kind of cold stoicism. It dishonors those it worships. And by that it means that, I guess it means that you're trying to, worship pleasure, and that kind of dishonors it. I think that's what that means. That one sentence, or the next sentence that goes along with it, I have a little hard time understanding what's meant by that. I should have looked that up before I made a video. For what difference does it make whether you deny the gods or bring them into disrepute? These are the things which should be learned, and not just learned, but learned by heart. Philosophy has no business to supply vice with excuses. Philosophy has no business to supply vice with excuses. It's so easy to rationalize things, and you can use philosophy to do that. In fact, the previous paragraph talks about using Stoicism. I didn't talk about it, but using Stoic beliefs, but twisting them into practices that are decidedly anti-Stoic. A sick man is not encouraged to live in a reckless manner by his doctor. I'm sorry, I misread that. A sick man who is encouraged to live in a reckless manner by his doctor has not a hope of getting well. If you are trying to become a good person, which I hope all of us are, then we're not. But for those of us that are, then the behavior that you make has a big impact on that, and we shouldn't be adding excuses to that. That actually, I think, is something that Aristotle talked about, how your behavior changes your character. I do not remember how he put it, because it was well over 10 years ago that I read this. I did a video on it. I actually compared Aristotle with Martin Luther. Actually, more accurately, I just compared Aristotle with Jesus, because Jesus was the one that said a good tree bears good fruit, whereas Aristotle was essentially saying that good fruit produces good tree. He didn't say that. That wouldn't make any sense, but he was saying that you become a good person by doing good works, whereas Jesus says you do good works because you are a good person. Anyway, so with that last bookmark is the end notes. So I am done with Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. Maybe some people are glad to not see these videos on your feed anymore. I don't know. But I do have some follow-up thoughts. I definitely recommend it. The reason why I made these videos was so that I can turn them into audio, so that I can listen to them later. I know that almost sounds narcissistic to listen to my own voice, but it's a memory thing. It's because I want to go back and remember the things that I found that were meaningful. And this book is worth doing that with. Because it's got a lot of practical wisdom to it. I have to admit, it's not quite as good as I thought it would be. I thought it would be better. The later letters were really, really good, I thought. It was kind of weird. It's like the later it got, the better the letters got. The longer, too. I would say that one thing that I think was kind of very similar, something I think is similar was in the Old Testament, you've got the book of Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes, both of which are, especially the book of Ecclesiastes, it's quite a bit more poetic than Seneca, but it's good. I recommend it. I kind of especially recommend it if you're not a religious person, and the reason why is because it can give some more, ancient wisdom guidance. The kind of thing that, religious people like me try to look for that kind of wisdom. I know that sounds like a weird way of putting it, especially since I would say the better thing to do would be to find Christ. But failing that, I do think that this kind of thing could be very beneficial in your life. I also want to read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius sometime, but yeah, that's not a very impactful, emotional conclusion. I think there's a hair in my glasses. But bottom line, it's a good book. I recommend it. I will probably reread it one day. In the meantime, I've got these videos and I'm going to turn into audio for that. All right. Well, if you've actually watched these or listened to them, thank you.